The heat inside the hangar shimmered like a living thing, coiling above the hulking shadow of the Apache gunship. Its metal body gleamed under the pale light, scarred, weary, and proud. The air smelled of burnt oil, hydraulic fluid, and dust, the scent of war that clung to every corner of the base. Near the aircraft, kneeling beneath its mounted gun, a woman worked silently, her hands steady, her face streaked with a faint smear of carbon. She wore no rank on her collar, no insignia on her chest, only a pair of oil-stained overalls rolled at the sleeves. Her focus was absolute, mechanical, almost reverent, as if the weapon she was repairing wasn't just a tool of destruction, but something sacred, something personal. "Hey, you're not supposed to be in that section," barked a voice from behind. The command sliced through the low hum of the hangar, sharp and echoing. Captain Rains strode toward her, boots striking the concrete with authority. He was all precision, creased uniform, clipped tone, and that thin impatience worn by men too used to being obeyed. The woman didn't look up. She tightened a bolt, adjusted the calibration, and only then wiped her hands on a rag before standing. Her eyes, gray and unflinching, met his for the first time. "I was told the gun jammed mid. Run," she said quietly. "If you plan to take this bird up, you'll want it working." Rains frowned. "That's not your call. Who authorized you to touch my Apache?" She tilted her head slightly, an unreadable expression crossing her face. "Your Apache." The question lingered, soft yet heavy, and it silenced the few mechanics nearby who had been pretending not to watch. The tension thickened. Rains took a step closer. "Yes, mine. I'm the commanding officer here, and I don't recall authorizing you to override maintenance protocols." Her gaze didn't waver. "Then it's a good thing I didn't need your authorization." The murmur in the hangar grew, quiet but unmistakable, an undercurrent of disbelief that anyone would speak to Rains that way. His jaw tightened, his hand brushing the edge of his sidearm. Not as a threat, but as a reminder of authority. "Who exactly do you think you are?" he demanded. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her pocket and handed him a small metal chip, the kind used for encrypted access clearance. It was marked with the emblem of the 42nd Air Regiment, but beneath it, almost faded, was a second mark, a falcon's talon clutching a flame. Rains froze. That insignia hadn't been used in over a decade. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice lowering. She said nothing. Her silence was steady, unyielding. Rains turned the chip over again, as if the weight of it might reveal more than the words he'd been given. He gestured for a nearby officer. "Run this clearance," he ordered. The young sergeant typed rapidly into a terminal, and within moments his face went pale. He looked at Rains, then at the woman, his throat tightening. "Sir, she's cleared for level 6 combat systems. That's higher than any of us." Rains stared at her. "Who the hell are you?" The woman's lips curved, not into a smile, but something colder, older. "Just a mechanic," she said. Then she bent down, reconnected the final feed to the Apache's gun, and stepped back as the weapon powered up with a deep, resonant hum. The entire hangar seemed to breathe with it. Rains couldn't look away. Something about the way she moved, the precision, the familiarity, spoke of years in combat, of loss, of someone who had built and rebuilt machines not for glory but survival. "Captain," the sergeant whispered, still staring at the screen. "Her name's Lieutenant Area Vance, former air weapons technician, 42nd Regiment, Mia, 5 years ago." The words hit the air like a thunderclap. Rains' breath caught. "Mia." The sergeant nodded. "Declared dead after the Falcon Valley siege." Rains turned toward her, eyes wide. But she was already walking away, her sleeve catching the light just enough for him to notice something he hadn't before. A stitched mark near her shoulder, faded but unmistakable. The Falcon. Insignia, half, burned away, the same one from the file of the fallen. The hangar was silent as she disappeared into the light spilling from the open doors. The base carried on in uneasy silence after she left, but the echoes of her presence clung to the air. Men who had worked on those floors for years whispered her name under their breath, uncertain whether they had just seen a ghost or a legend. Rains stood near the Apache long after she was gone, staring at the faint smear of oil where she'd been kneeling. There was a chill crawling up his spine that no desert heat could chase away. He wasn't a man easily shaken, but something about her, her composure, her silence, that insignia, unsettled him in ways no enemy fire ever had. That night, in his office, Rains opened the classified archives. The monitor flickered as he typed her name. Lieutenant Area Vance. The file opened with a warning header, "Deceased in action. All data restricted by order of Central Command." He bypassed the first lock with his command clearance. The second he broke with an override key. What appeared wasn't just a report. It was a dossier of someone erased. Missions redacted, flight logs missing, tactical memos marked confidential. But buried at the bottom was one unclassified image. A group of soldiers in the Falcon Valley ravine, all smiling despite the grime on their faces, with Arya standing at the center, her flight suit torn, her arm wrapped in bandages, and the barrel of an A-10's rotary cannon, smudged with blood and sand behind her. The caption below read, "Last surviving unit before the siege." The report detailed how her team had been ambushed while providing air cover for an extraction convoy. Communications had gone dark, visibility near zero. She had taken a hit but refused to eject, circling the canyon until fuel bled dry. When the rescue unit finally arrived, there was nothing left but wreckage and silence. She had been declared missing. Rains leaned back, rubbing his temples. How does someone die in a crash, then show up 5 years later fixing an Apache's gun? He murmured. His voice echoed in the empty office. The answer came the next morning when he saw her again. She was outside near the runway, rolling a cart of ammunition toward the same Apache she had repaired the night before. The dawn light caught her hair, turning it to a muted blaze. Her movements were exact, almost ritualistic. Rains walked over, slower this time, with less command and more curiosity. "You were in Falcon Valley," he said quietly. She didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed on the machine. He tried again. "The report says your A-10 went down. That you reports are written by people who weren't there." She said, her voice calm but edged. "Sometimes silence keeps things cleaner." He frowned. Cleaner for who? She finally looked at him, eyes like weathered steel. For the ones who lived. There was something behind those words, a weight he couldn't yet name. Before he could ask more, the alarm blared across the base. Incoming alert. The screens in the hangar flashed red, and every mechanic, pilot, and guard snapped into motion. Rains turned toward the operations deck, his mind flipping into command instinct. "Status report," he shouted. "Unidentified convoy approaching from the East Ridge, no clearance, no IFF signal." A voice called back. Could be smugglers, could be hostiles. The Apache's gun was still open, ammo belts half fed. Arya dropped the cart and moved with startling speed. "If they cross that ridge," she said, "they'll be within range of the supply depot." Rains hesitated. "You're not cleared for flight. You're out of time for clearance," she replied, stepping up into the cockpit as if she'd never left it. Her hands found the controls like an old prayer. Rains started to order her down, but then he saw it again, that mark on her sleeve, the half-burned Falcon emblem. His voice faltered. There was something about the way she fit in that seat, like she belonged to it, like the machine recognized her. "Power her up," he finally said. The engines ignited with a roar that rattled the walls, the gun spinning into a low mechanical growl. As the hangar doors opened, dust and wind filled the space, stinging everyone's eyes. She didn't wait for clearance. She didn't need it. The Apache rose from the ground, steady and controlled, lifting into the dawn as the base watched in silence. Rains stood frozen, watching the woman once thought dead fly into the same kind of canyon that had swallowed her 5 years before. Only this time, she wasn't vanishing, she was returning. The canyon stretched before her like a scar carved deep into the earth, narrow, twisting, unforgiving. Wind whipped against the cockpit glass as Arya guided the Apache low, her fingers steady on the cyclic. The rotors churned the air into a storm of grit and heat. The scent of burning sand seeping through the vents. Every vibration, every shift of pressure was familiar. It was the same kind of canyon she had died in, or was meant to. The radar pinged faintly, 3 armored trucks, unmarked, pushing fast toward the depot. Unauthorized convoy confirmed. Rain's voice crackled through the comms. Engage if hostile. She said nothing, eyes locked on the horizon. The past and present seemed to merge. Another canyon, another impossible mission. Another silence that only death had once broken. Her memories came not as thoughts, but sensations, the burn of smoke in her lungs, the hiss of fuel leaking from the A-10, the broken cries of her squadmates fading under enemy fire. She remembered promising them she'd hold the line. She remembered the sound of the crash, the light fading, and the vow she'd whispered into the dust. If I live, I'll finish what we started. And she had lived, not rescued, but rebuilt. Taken in by a covert tech unit, buried beneath layers of secrecy, stripped of identity but kept alive because of what she knew. The Falcon system, an experimental weapons calibration she had designed, one that could turn the tide of war. But when politics changed, her existence became inconvenient. The files were sealed. The Falcon insignia was burned from uniforms, and she vanished. Now, 5 years later, the past was coming back through the ridge. The trucks split formation, taking cover behind the rocky walls. She could almost sense the hum of their mounted guns before they appeared on radar. Rain's voice came again, more urgent this time. Arya, you're too low. Pull back, wait for backup. But she didn't. The canyon was her language, and she read it like scripture. She adjusted altitude, ducking below their line of sight, the gun swiveling into alignment. Through the haze, she saw the glint of a launcher rising from the lead vehicle. Her pulse slowed not from fear, but from focus. She squeezed the trigger, and the Apache's chain gun thundered to life. Metal tore apart like paper. The lead truck exploded, the blast painting the canyon walls in light. The others tried to swerve. Too late, the second truck's axle shattered under her next burst. The third managed to slip behind a rock outcrop. Once breaking formation, Rains said, his voice steady now, though she could hear the disbelief beneath it. "Let it run," she replied. "I want to know where it's going." She followed, shadowing the last vehicle, as it raced through the ravine toward a cave system at the canyon's end. A known smuggler's route that connected to the old Falcon outpost. The closer she got, the more her chest tightened. She'd been here before, the same valley, the same stone ridges, the same scars on the land where her A-10 had burned out years ago. The truck vanished into the darkness of the cave. She hovered outside, the rotor wash sending dust spiraling into the air. Then she saw it, painted faintly across the rock, nearly erased by time, the Talon insignia of her old unit. It wasn't just an old memory, it was a grave. She landed the Apache at the canyon's mouth and stepped out, boots crunching on the scorched earth. The silence here felt heavier than any battlefield, the kind that presses on the soul. Inside the cave, light flickered from torches. Shadows moved, armed men guarding crates, marked with stolen weapons. She recognized the model numbers. Falcon prototypes, her designs. One of the men turned at the sound of her footsteps. Who the hell? His voice never finished. The sidearm in her hand barked once, echoing through the chamber. The others shouted, scrambled, fired blindly. She moved through the chaos like a phantom, silent, efficient, her expression calm. When it ended, the air was thick with dust and gunpowder. She walked to one of the crates, brushing her fingers over the Falcon logo burned into the lid. "You shouldn't have come back," said a voice from deeper inside. A tall man stepped forward, older, scarred, but unmistakable. Colonel Denton, the man who had signed the report of her death. She didn't lift her weapon. She didn't need to. "You buried me," she said softly. He gave a humorless laugh. "You were supposed to stay buried. You knew too much. I knew enough to stop what you're doing now," she replied. His smirk faded. "You can't stop this area. The Falcons were disbanded for a reason. What's left here belongs to me." "No," she said, stepping closer, her voice steady, cold. "It belongs to those who didn't make it out of that canyon." For a moment, neither moved. Then from outside, the sound of rotor blades grew louder, Rain's reinforcements, closing in. Denton's eyes flicked toward the entrance. That hesitation was all she needed. The shot was clean. When she holstered her weapon, her expression didn't change. By the time Rains arrived, the cave was silent again. He found her standing near the crates, staring at the faint light filtering in from above. "You disobeyed a direct order," he said quietly, stepping closer. She turned to face him, the sunlight catching her sleeve again, the same burned insignia that had started everything. "I finished a war you didn't know was still happening," she said. Her tone wasn't defiant, just final. Rains looked past her at the destroyed convoy, the weapons, the carnage, and for the first time he understood. She hadn't returned to live again. She had returned to close the last open wound. The report he filed later that night was brief. Unauthorized pilot prevented hostile acquisition of Falcon weapons. Casualties, minimal, status contained, but unofficially, everyone at the base knew the truth. Word spread fast, the woman who fixed the Apache had once been its ghost. Mechanics left a single Falcon patch pinned to the hangar wall. The mark burned but still visible. And sometimes, when the engines started before dawn, Rains swore he could hear her voice through the static. Calm, steady, untouchable. She didn't need medals or ranks. Her silence had spoken enough.